And now it's time for the moment you've been waiting for, the keynote speaker.
Today's keynote speaker has a very special place in my heart. She joined our tutorial team on our website over 5 years ago, and within that time she's become one of the cornerstones of our site, and I couldn't imagine our team without her. Within just 5 years, this individual has done it all. She has written tutorials, she has edited tutorials, she has written books, she has led book projects, she has spoken at this conference, she has run her own conference, she's hosted our podcast, hosted her own podcast, written a children's book, made a board game. I could go on and on, it's crazy. But in addition to all of this person's very impressive accomplishments, this individual is one of the most caring and giving people I know. She is always giving everything she has to just make other people's lives just a little bit better. This person is hardworking, tough, and an inspiration to me and the entire RWDevCon team. I'm incredibly grateful for her friendship, support, and world-class contributions to the iOS community over the years. So please help me give a warm welcome to this year's keynote speaker, Tammy Coron.
Thank you. So they couldn't get her, so they asked me to come. How many of you would rather be chased by zombies than be stuck in a room talking to someone you've never met, you don't know anything about, and that you're nervous to be there? I mean, zombies seem easier, right? Raise your hand. When I was growing up, I didn't really fit in. I wasn't athletic enough to be a jock. I wasn't smart enough to be a brainiac or a nerd. And I certainly wasn't pretty enough to be popular. But I knew how to fit in. I just didn't know how to belong. Now, that might be a foreign concept to some of you. Excuse me. I mean, what is the difference between fitting in and belonging? You would think, well, they're sort of the same thing, right? But they're not. Fitting in is about assessing a situation and becoming who you need to be in order to be accepted. And belonging, on the other hand, doesn't require us to change who we are. It requires us to be who we are. Now, these words aren't mine. These are Brene Brown from her book. She's a TED speaker. She's absolutely wonderful. She talks about vulnerability mostly. But she wrote this book, The Gifts of Imperfection. Let go of who you're supposed to be and embrace who you are. And that's what she talks about, fitting in and belonging. And I never belonged. But honestly, to me, it didn't matter. As long as I fit in, that was enough. I didn't need to belong. One of the reasons that I had such a big trouble with belonging is because when you're interacting with people, the way that you think they see you is how, well, for me anyway, is how I thought everyone saw me. I thought they saw me the way I saw me, and I never saw me in very good light. High school dropout, poor choices, very poor choices. So when I met people, I thought that they thought how I thought, that I wasn't worth anything. I had no value to give. How could I possibly contribute to this relationship that we have? I'm horrible. Who wants me? But I fit in because I knew how to play the game. And that's what my mother said. You have to learn to play the game. Humans are so connected. We need that social connection. Without it, we suffer. We lose that connection and we're on an island by ourselves. We don't know what to do. We feel disconnected, we feel hurt, we feel alone. Now, our bodies are really smart, our brains are really smart, really complicated. It knows what you need, it knows what you don't need. So even if you don't have that intellectual connection that says, I know I need people, because I never had that. I never had that conceptual idea that says, I know I need people, so I'm going to be with people. But my body knew it. My body knew that I needed people. And yet, I hid every opportunity I had. Like this conference, like Ray said 4 years ago, he believed in me. He saw something I didn't know I had, because to me, I'm just me. And I came to the conference and I would hide. I still do it, I'm not gonna lie. I'm terrified to be up here right now in front of all of you. I'm terrified to talk with you out there when I meet with you. So I hide. I hide in my phone. I don't know. I think Ray might have forced us to go to the first mixer the first time, so I think I was there, but I think I hid in a corner and I blocked it out of my mind anyway because it was terrifying. But my body knew I needed to be there. It knew. I mean, how could it not know? This is where we came from. We came from a society where we were small groups of individuals that came together to survive. I mean, think about sitting around a campfire. There's no technology. This is way back when. And a saber-toothed tiger or some sort of prehistoric animal that I don't really know exists are out there and they're attacking you. You have to come together to survive a single day back then. It's who we are. But we've forgotten it. We're afraid of it. We go into a conversation confused. Don't know what to talk about. And again, some of you may be able to identify with this. Some of you may just be an extrovert and not have issues with this. So I'm speaking from personal experience only. And what I'm feeling, some of you may not be feeling. And I appreciate you allowing me to talk about that. And those are things that I think about. I'm like, gosh, what should we talk about? Should I look at your eyes? Should I, wait a second, are you looking at my face? Whoa, are you looking at my lips? Are my lips doing something weird while I'm talking? Did I accidentally spit a piece of food onto your face and you didn't know it? Oh, geez, what's going to happen? These are things I go through whenever I open my mouth and wait for the words to fall out. Because they do sometimes just fall out. I'm not good with time. So roughly about 10 years ago, I worked for it was a challenging environment. It was not a very good place to be. And and I might get emotional. I learned the other day that you can be a high-functioning crier, so I might be a high-functioning crier today. We'll see how it goes. But there was this gentleman there. His name was Barry, a younger kid. He was, I was older than he was, but we made a little connection. We talked. It was great. But it was a little connection. It was superficial. We enjoyed things that we talked about, but it was nothing too deep. We didn't have that thing. Barry felt alone, I would imagine, because Barry killed himself. And when we went into work that day, and I apologize if I triggered anyone, I'm sorry, but Barry and I, we were friends, but we didn't make that connection. And I miss him terribly. Every day I think about him. And I got to thinking at that point, I need to get out of here. I need to stop fitting in. And I need to belong, because maybe if Barry belonged, it'd be different. You don't know. You never know. So I went on an interview, and I went as I was, who I was, with my hat. I did have a button-up shirt, because I used to have this favorite gray shirt. I loved it, so I know I wore it. I needed to be a little classy, right? But I left the hat. And I showed up, and I said, here I am. I'm here for the interview. And we talked, and they said, we want you to do Ruby on Rails. I said, oh, I don't know Ruby on Rails, but I live next to a bookstore, and I'm just going to go read a book on Ruby on Rails, and I'll be right back. But you know what happened during that conversation? We talked. We had a great time. We talked about everything, and we also talked about Ruby and this bookstore. And they said, we're going to give you the job, and let's see how it goes. So I got the job. I did the project. Time went by, and they said, hey, let's make iPhone apps. Notice I didn't say iOS apps. This is about 8 years ago. iOS didn't exist yet. But I know I'll go to the bookstore. Trouble is, no content was there for me to read. It was too new. So I was reminded of a story about the crow and the pitcher. I don't know if anyone knows the story, but it's about a crow, and he's dying of thirst, and he's flying it through the desert, and he needs to drink because he's dying of thirst. And he comes across this thing with water, this pitcher of water, and he can't get his beak into the water to drink, into the pitcher to drink. So he's gonna starve, not starve, but drown, not drown. He's gonna do something that's really not conducive to taking another breath. We'll go with that. So he's ready to die, and he looks, and he's like, because crows talk. He looks, he says out loud, he's like, oh, there's pebbles over there. I know, I'm just going to take a pebble and I'm going to put it over here and stick it in the jar and I'm going to go, and he keeps doing this. You like that? Like, it's like a hula dance. So he takes these pebbles and he picks one up and he throws it in the jar, and the water rises so much that he gets to take a drink and live. Now that story, this is him living, by the way, and dropping pebbles in. But that story, you would think that, well, that's about never giving up, right? I gave my first talk here 4 years ago was, the impossible just takes a little bit longer. Where there's a will, there's a way. But for me, it was more than that. It was about all these little pieces, all these little pebbles, these tiny little pebbles, coming together to control water. Powerful force on this planet, water, to the point where it rose up and now he can drink. So how does that relate? Well, I told you that there were no books for me to read on iPhone development. And I found RWDevCon. And I learned how to do stuff thanks to the site. And then I became a member of that site. And then, as Ray said, a writer and tech editor and FPE and all these moving parts with all of these people, all of these wonderful people coming together. And in my mind, the connection that I made for this story, in addition to the, there's nothing that's impossible, we're like a well of knowledge, tutorial water, and all of us are pebbles. And we all come together, and as we do it, the water rises and the knowledge overflows. And we make connections in the process. And yet, sometimes I still feel like I'm in a little box because I'm still afraid of people. And I don't get it. I don't understand. I need to fix this. So I joined the RWDevCon podcast the first season to meet more people. And because Ray was like, hey, why not do it? So we did it. And I met Felipe. He's the guy over there. After that first season, him and I went on to start another podcast of our own, and that would be the Roundabout Creative Chaos podcast. You notice that there are a couple other people. That's my mom's right there. Oh, you got to drag your mom in when you're working, right? Why not? So Felipe and my mom, they still occasionally come in and co-host with us. Charlie Fulton is another RWDevCon team member. He's a co-host, occasionally. Greg Heo right there has hosted the show. And that guy right there, Tim Mitra, who I met through the site. Him and I, we talk all the time. I don't know why he still talks to me, but we do. We still talk. But you know who else we talk to? All these people on the show. So all of these people, and there are more people. We've been doing the show for like 2.5 years now. And the gist of the show is we talk to people who are interested and creative, and we interview them. And that's really hard when you're afraid of people, to talk to strangers. But this is what I'm learning through that process of talking with people. It's supposed to be weekly, but I'm a little slow to the roll, and editing takes time. Anyone who's listening to the show, I apologize for that. It just comes out when it comes out. But how do you do it? How do you put yourself into this situation where you need to talk to somebody? You have to be authentic. right? You have to be who you are. If I had gone to that interview, I feel like I wouldn't, as someone else, I feel like I wouldn't be who I was. And this is all about making connections with people. Like, that's important, but how do you do it, right? You also, and these are suggestions. This is not like, oh, you need to do this or it's not going to work. No, these are things that have been helpful to me. And making eye contact, being present. If eye contact makes you uncomfortable, don't do it. But be present, be in the moment, be engaged. It's easier to ask the next follow-up question in the interview if I have listened to what the person has said. But when I'm sitting there thinking about, oh my goodness, what should I talk about next? It's going to be my turn to talk. Oh my goodness, I need to say something. Boom, I've completely missed what they said. And the connection is disconnected. I can't stress this enough. If anyone has ever talked to me at this conference or any other place, you've nailed me down and we have had a conversation, you know that I will not talk to you about the weather, sports, any of the superficial stuff. No, I want to know what your hopes and your dreams are. And I know it sounds a little cliche and silly, but I want to know who you are. I want to know your story. And I'm going to anonymously call someone out here. But I asked them just yesterday, I said, hey, be on the show. We would love to have you. And the response was, I'm not interesting enough. I'm not creative. And I'm thinking, yes, oh my God, yes, you are. We are all creative. We are all important. We all have a story to tell. Find out that person's story. It's important. Know that it's okay to tell yours. Here's a hard one for me. Names. I'm terrible with them. I'm trying more and more to be like, okay, what's your name? Okay, and then I'm trying to use it in the conversation. And here's a really cool, interesting thing I didn't ever know until recently. It's okay to forget a name and ask the person what their name is. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Would you please tell me again? It's okay. I know what you're thinking, maybe. Well, I probably don't know what you're thinking, but I know what I was thinking when I was putting this together. Oh my God, is this worth it? I mean, I'm so afraid of people. Is it worth the time to go out and talk to them? I mean, we're not being chased by wild animals anymore. It's not like I really need them to survive. But I do. You do. We all need each other. Because when we come together, when we truly come together, we create amazing things. Now, I'm a little older than some of you, a little younger than some of you. I went through and I'm looking like, who are my favorite people that have come together to create amazing things? And yes, some of these people only exist in an imaginary film or book or TV show or movie. But some of them, and I'll go through them. I mean, Ralph and Ed Norton and Dumb and Dumber. These guys are hysterical, right? Maybe not for you, but I think they're hilarious. We've got Mo, Larry, and Curly, the Three Stooges. I mean, they're great. Those are the fictional people. But we also have, anyone know who this is? This is Bill Gates and Paul Allen, Microsoft people. Yeah, I included them in this. Yay, I'm trying to be all inclusive. Yay. We've got Steve Jobs. I mean, the other Steve Wozniak, they all come together. The Beatles, right? Oh, the Beatles, come on. And we've got the Ghostbusters. We would all be up in the tower of whatever. I should have remembered this 80s history, but we all be up in the tower getting attacked by the evil Ghostbusters if it weren't for them. Ben and Jerry, how boring would ice cream be if it was just Ben? My goodness. Terrible. Who wants to live in a world without Ben and Jerry's? We've got the Wright brothers, and I talked about them in my Impossible speech. Granted, their mom probably forced them to be friends, but they came together and they created flying, which I still kind of don't like, but they did that together. They did it together. And my personal favorite, Ethel and Lucy. It doesn't get better than that. It's like the Thelma and Louise without the driving off the cliff part. So to this today, tomorrow, while you're here at the conference, beyond this, go out and make those connections. Ask someone, how was your day? What is your name? What are you working on? Is there anything you need help with? Programming, anything else? Make those connections. If you see someone in the corner and you can do it without being overly obnoxious and they're trying to get away from people on their phone, or they're sitting alone at lunch. Make that effort to make that connection. Because as someone who's an introvert and has made countless mistakes, passing up that opportunity to speak with people because I was too afraid, I'm more afraid of dying alone than I am of talking to another person. So I implore all of you, please go out after this, make a connection, and thank your mom. Thank you.